Welcome to Pillowtime Lore. This is your soft corner of the night, a place where stories live like warm embers, glowing in the dark. Before we begin, take a moment to slow down. Let your body melt into whatever holds you, your bed, your chair, or that cozy blanket wrapped around your shoulders. Feel how the day begins to drift away, piece by piece, as if it never belonged to you in the first place. Outside your window, the night is calm. The world has quieted down, and the sky has dressed itself in stars. Imagine gentle snowflakes floating in the distance, each one falling without hurry, without noise, just a silent rhythm to remind you that everything is allowed to slow. And here, in this moment, so are you. The glow of a fireplace flickers softly nearby, its warmth wrapping around you like an embrace. The golden light catches on shelves of books, on soft pillows, on every little detail that makes a room feel like home. You breathe in, and the air feels gentle, safe, peaceful. You breathe out, and the weight of today slips further and further away. There is nothing you need to do right now. No expectation, no demand, only rest, only stillness, only the quiet anticipation of a story that will soon take you by the hand and guide you through places that exist just beyond the edge of dreams. So, let the rhythm of your breath carry you deeper into calm. With every inhale, feel your body fill with ease. With every exhale, imagine the clutter of the day dissolving like mist. You are free now, free to wander through the world of tales where time is slower, and every word is a lantern leading you further into comfort. This is Pillowtime Lore, and tonight, a story awaits you. Some children are born with a family, and some have to search for one. Eliza is one of those children, a spirited, fiery-haired girl with freckles and a heart full of dreams, who has spent most of her life in an orphanage, imagining what it would feel like to belong somewhere. To someone, her world has always been quiet, structured, and safe in its own way. Yet she longs for warmth, for laughter that isn't shared with strangers, and for the kind of love that comes naturally, without rules or expectations. She doesn't know it yet, but a small, quiet cottage in the countryside, surrounded by green fields, orchards, and whispering trees, is about to open its doors to her, changing everything she has ever known. This story follows Eliza as she discovers that family can be unexpected, that mistakes can lead to lessons, and that the little moments of kindness, laughter, and understanding can transform a house into a home. She will meet friends, face challenges, and uncover the magic hidden in the ordinary, learning that courage and hope are found even in the smallest hearts. Join us on this journey of laughter, tears, discovery, and love. This is the story of finding home, a tale of belonging, of hearts connecting, and of a girl learning that sometimes home isn't just a place, it's the people who choose to hold you close and never let you go. The village of Greenfield lay quietly nestled between rolling hills, where golden fields stretched as far as the eye could see. At the edge of the village stood a small stone cottage with ivy climbing its walls. It was home to Martha and Harold, a pair of aging siblings who had lived there their whole lives. Martha was the stern one, always busy with chores and keeping everything in order. Harold was softer, with a kind heart and a quiet hope that someday their lonely home might be filled with laughter again. One crisp morning, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, Harold carried in the mail. Among the bills and letters was one that made his hands tremble slightly. It was from the orphanage. Martha wiped her hands on her apron and opened it carefully. As she read, her sharp eyes softened. The letter confirmed that a young boy would be sent to live with them. He would help Harold with the farm work and keep the place running smoothly. Martha nodded approvingly, saying this was exactly what they needed. Harold, on the other hand, felt a warm glow in his chest. He secretly imagined a cheerful child who would bring joy and companionship. For the rest of the day, the siblings worked tirelessly to prepare for the boy's arrival. Martha scrubbed the spare room until it shone, while Harold built a small wooden stool for the boy to sit on at the dinner table. They spoke of the future as they worked, Martha listing all the chores the boy would help with, Harold dreaming aloud of teaching him to fish by the river and care for the animals. Neither of them could have guessed what surprise awaited them far away in a crowded city orphanage. A lively girl named Eliza packed her small, worn suitcase with trembling hands. Her heart fluttered with excitement. She had been chosen at last. She imagined fields of green, a cozy home, and people who might finally love her. Little did she know her arrival at Greenfield Cottage would change everything. The next morning, Harold set out early for the train station, the mist still clinging to the fields as he walked down the narrow dirt road. His heart was light with excitement. He imagined the boy stepping off the train, perhaps shy and quiet at first, but eager to learn and help with the farm. Harold pictured himself showing the boy how to mend fences, milk the cows, and maybe even fish in the sparkling stream that wound its way through their land. He smiled to himself, thinking how nice it would be to hear young laughter echoing through the cottage once again. When the train arrived with a loud whistle, Harold stood eagerly by the platform, scanning the crowd for a small boy with a travel bag. Instead, to his utter shock, a thin little girl with fiery red hair, freckles scattered across her nose, and bright, eager eyes came bounding down the steps, clutching a worn suitcase that seemed far too heavy for her small frame. Before Harold could say a word, the girl burst into a stream of chatter, exclaiming how beautiful the countryside was, how she had always dreamed of living somewhere with green fields and wide skies. She told him her name was Eliza, and that she could hardly wait to start her new life. Harold stood frozen, unsure what to do. He wanted to explain the mix-up, but the sparkle in Eliza's eyes and her hopeful smile tugged at his heart, so he simply nodded and carried her bag, saying they should head home. When they reached the cottage, Martha came rushing out, expecting a boy. The moment she saw Eliza, her mouth dropped open, her face turning red with anger. Eliza, sensing she was not welcome, quickly tried to charm Martha with polite words and bright smiles. But deep inside, Her heart ached with fear that she might be sent away again. As evening fell over Greenfield, the sky painted itself in soft pinks and golds. Eliza clutched her worn suitcase tightly as Harold guided her inside the little stone cottage. The air smelled faintly of fresh bread and wood smoke. It felt warm and safe. Harold gave her a kind smile and led her to a small room tucked beneath the slanted roof. The room was simple, with a narrow bed, a wooden dresser, and a window that looked out over the fields. To Eliza, it was the most wonderful place she had ever seen. She ran to the window, pressing her hands against the glass, whispering about how she could see the stars so clearly from here. Harold chuckled softly, pleased by her excitement. Martha, however, stood in the doorway with crossed arms, her face tight and stern. She reminded Harold that this was not what they had asked for. A boy was supposed to come, someone strong enough to help with farm work. Harold gently urged Martha to let Eliza stay for the night, saying the journey had been long and the girl looked tired and hungry. Martha reluctantly agreed, though her frown never softened at supper. Harold and Eliza chatted about the farm animals and the nearby village. Eliza's words spilled out like a bubbling brook, full of excitement and dreams. Martha remained mostly silent, only speaking when necessary after the meal. Harold showed Eliza how to wash up and tuck herself into bed. She lay beneath the quilt, whispering to herself that perhaps this could be her forever home, her heart swelling with fragile hope. Downstairs, Martha's voice rose in anger as she told Harold that Eliza must be sent back to the orphanage at once. Harold argued, saying the girl deserved a chance to belong somewhere. The night grew heavy with their disagreement while upstairs. Eliza drifted to sleep, unaware of the storm brewing beneath her. The sun rose gently over Greenfield, painting the sky with pale shades of orange and gold. Eliza woke with a burst of energy, determined to prove that she could be useful and worthy of staying. She slipped into her shoes and hurried downstairs, where Harold was already sipping his morning tea with bright, eager eyes. Eliza announced that she wanted to help with the chores. Harold smiled warmly, though he warned her that farm work was not as easy as it looked. Martha, standing near the stove, raised an eyebrow and muttered that this would only end in trouble. Eliza followed Harold to the barn, chattering excitedly about how she had read stories of farm life and knew it would be magical. Her words were so full of wonder that Harold could not bring himself to dampen her spirits. He handed her a bucket of milk and explained how to pour it carefully into the pail. Eliza nodded seriously, but the moment she tried, the bucket tipped and milk splashed everywhere. Eliza gasped and immediately began describing the puddle as a tiny silver pond for fairy creatures. Harold laughed so hard that his shoulders shook, while Martha, watching from the doorway, sighed loudly and shook her head. Next, Eliza decided to gather eggs. She tiptoed toward the henhouse, whispering a little story about each chicken. When one flapped its wings, suddenly, Eliza shrieked and ran, accidentally leaving the door wide open. A flurry of chickens burst out, clucking wildly as they scattered through the yard. Eliza chased after them, her shoes sinking into the muddy ground until she was covered in dirt from head to toe by the time the chaos ended. The barn was messy, the floor was muddy, and Martha's patience was thin. Harold, however, could not stop laughing. And even though Martha crossed her arms tightly, a tiny smile tugged at her lips. Eliza's endless stories and laughter had begun to bring life back into the quiet cottage. Even if Martha would never admit it aloud, a few days after her wild adventure with the chickens, Eliza was given permission to walk into the village. Harold hoped the outing would lift her spirits, while Martha simply reminded her to behave and return before sunset. Eliza skipped down the winding dirt path, her eyes wide with wonder at the charming little houses and colorful gardens she passed along the way. Every sight felt like a piece of a dream. As she reached the village square, she saw children laughing and playing, though most of them were with their families and seemed too busy to notice her. Eliza's heart sank a little as she wandered near the edge of the square. Eliza heard a soft voice humming and followed the sound to a quiet spot beneath an old willow tree by a gentle stream. There sat a girl with long dark hair and a book in her lap. She looked up in surprise as Eliza approached. The girl introduced herself as Sophie and welcomed Eliza with a warm smile. The two began to talk, and soon Eliza was pouring out her thoughts and dreams as if they had known each other forever. Sophie listened with shining eyes and shared her own secret wish to one day travel the world and see places she had only read about in her books. From that day on, Eliza and Sophie met often beneath the willow tree. They exchanged stories, laughed about silly things, and planned imaginary journeys to faraway lands for the first time. Eliza felt she truly belonged somewhere and had a friend who understood her heart. When Eliza returned home one evening, bubbling with excitement, Martha listened quietly before sternly warning her not to get too comfortable. She reminded Eliza that she still might be sent back to the orphanage. Eliza nodded bravely, but inside, a wave of fear stirred, threatening the fragile happiness she had begun to build. The crisp autumn air buzzed with excitement as Greenfield prepared for its annual harvest festival. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and the scent of warm pies and roasted corn drifted through the village square. Harold insisted that Eliza should come along, saying it would be a wonderful chance for her to meet everyone. Eliza's eyes sparkled with delight as she slipped into her best dress and hurried beside Harold, her heart racing with anticipation. The festival was more magical than she had imagined. There were stalls filled with homemade treats, games where children laughed and cheered, and lively music that made the whole square come alive. At first, Eliza felt shy, but Harold encouraged her to share one of her stories with a group of children. Soon she was spinning tales of enchanted forests and brave adventurers, her voice weaving magic as everyone listened in awe. Laughter and applause followed, and before long, Eliza was surrounded by new friends. Even the adults paused to smile and admire her charm. Martha stood off to the side, her arms crossed, watching silently as Eliza laughed and danced. Deep down, she felt a strange warmth, seeing the girl so happy, though she refused to admit it as the evening wore on. Eliza's joy reached its peak until she overheard Martha speaking to a neighbor. Martha's voice was cool as she explained that Eliza was only staying temporarily until the mistake was fixed. The words struck Eliza like a cold wind, her heart sinking. The night that had seemed so bright now felt unbearably heavy. The sky was heavy with dark clouds as a storm brewed in the distance. Harold mentioned that they needed to gather the last of the ripe apples from the orchard before the wind and rain ruined them. Martha said they would handle it later, but Eliza's heart ached with the memory of Martha's words at the festival. She was determined to prove she was not just a mistake. She wanted to show that she could be helpful and worthy of staying. While Harold and Martha were busy inside, Eliza slipped quietly out the back door with a basket in her hands. The orchard stretched before her, rows of trees heavy with red and golden apples. At first, she worked carefully, humming softly to herself. But as the clouds grew darker and the wind picked up, she began rushing, climbing higher branches and tugging at the fruit too quickly. In her haste, several branches snapped, and apples tumbled to the ground, bruised and ruined. Eliza gasped, trying to fix the mess, but the damage was done. Martha arrived just as Eliza stumbled down from the tree. Mud streaked across her dress. Martha's face turned red with anger as she saw the broken branches and spoiled apples. She declared in a sharp voice that this was the final straw. She told Harold that Eliza had to go back to the orphanage. Hiding behind the trees, Eliza's heart shattered. Hot tears blurred her vision as she turned and ran into the darkening woods, the storm breaking overhead while her sobs were swallowed by the howling wind. The storm broke with a fierce roar as heavy rain poured down over Greenfield. The wind howled through the trees, and lightning lit up the sky in bright flashes. Harold and Martha realized Eliza was nowhere in the house, and panic rose in their chests. Harold grabbed his lantern and coat, while Martha followed with trembling hands, calling Eliza's name into the dark night. Their voices were swallowed by the crashing thunder and swirling rain. Eliza ran blindly through the woods, branches whipping against her arms and face as tears mixed with raindrops. She clutched her small suitcase close to her chest. Though it was soaked and heavy, her heart pounded with fear and sorrow. All she could think about were Martha's cold words and the crushing thought that she was unwanted once again. Her breath came in quick gasps as she stumbled over roots and rocks, whispering to herself that she would find a place where someone truly wanted her, where she could stay forever without fear of being sent away. After what felt like hours, her legs gave out and she collapsed near a quiet stream, the rushing water muffled by the storm, shivering and soaked to the bone. Eliza curled herself into a small ball beneath the shelter of an overhanging tree. She whispered shaky prayers into the night, begging for a family who would love her no matter what mistakes she made. Though her voice was weak and tired, there was a glimmer of hope in her words. Meanwhile, Harold and Martha searched desperately, their lantern light bobbing through the trees. Harold's voice cracked as he shouted for Eliza, fear tightening his throat. Martha's heart pounded as guilt washed over her in that moment. She understood just how deeply she cared for the little girl who had brought warmth and laughter back into their home. Harold stumbled through the storm, his lantern swinging wildly as he pushed past branches and mud. His voice hoarse from shouting Eliza's name again and again, just when despair began to creep into his heart. The faint sound of soft sobbing reached his ears. He froze, straining to listen through the pounding rain. Then he saw a small figure curled beneath a tree near the stream. Trembling from the cold, "Eliza," he cried, rushing forward. Dropping to his knees beside her, Eliza lifted her tear-streaked face, her eyes wide with fear and relief. Harold gathered her into his arms without hesitation, holding her tightly as if he would never let go. His voice broke as he whispered that she was already his family and that she belonged with them no matter what. Eliza clung to him, her sobs shaking her small frame as she buried her face against his shoulder. Moments later, Martha burst through the trees, soaked and breathless, her stern expression crumbling into tears as she saw Eliza safe in Harold's arms. She dropped beside them, taking Eliza's hands in her own for the first time. Martha's voice was soft and trembling as she apologized for being harsh and distant. She told Eliza that she loved her deeply and never truly wanted to send her away. Eliza's eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they were tears of joy together. The three of them rose and made their way back through the storm, united not by blood, but by the bond of love that had finally made them a true family. The storm passed, leaving the village of Greenfield washed clean and sparkling under the morning sun. Back at the cottage, life began to change in ways Eliza had only dreamed of. Martha, who once wore a stern frown, now smiled more often, her voice softer and warmer as she began to laugh at Eliza's endless stories. Sometimes she even told a few of her own. Harold seemed happier than ever, his eyes shining with pride whenever he watched Eliza feed the chickens or help set the table. The house no longer felt quiet and lonely. It was filled with chatter and warmth. Eliza threw herself into her chores with newfound joy. Though she still had her clumsy moments, they no longer felt like failures. Harold would chuckle and help her fix the mess, while Martha offered gentle guidance instead of sharp words. In the village, people began to notice the change too, often commenting on how bright and cheerful the little cottage seemed now that Eliza was part of it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Eliza sat by her window, gazing out at the fields glowing softly in the fading light. Her heart felt full as she thought of her journey from the orphanage to this home filled with love. She whispered softly to herself that sometimes families are not the ones we are born into, but the ones who choose us. That night, the three of them sat around the wooden table, sharing a warm meal. Laughter echoing through the cozy cottage, golden light spilling from the windows into the cool evening air. A promise of love and belonging that would last forever.